The last time Meadowbrook felt truly peaceful was before October 23rd, 2010, before the autumn air, usually so fresh and crisp, became heavy with a quiet dread. This wasn't the silence of a calm evening. It was a chilling hush that settles when laughter stops and innocent lives simply disappear. For the Atherton family, the world shifted on its axis that day. 15-year-old Alara, bright and brimming with artistic dreams. 14-year-old Lyra, with her infectious energy and passion for music. And 12-year-old Serafina, the youngest, a budding dancer who brightened every room. These three sisters weren't just part of family. They were its very heart. Inseparable, full of shared secrets and futures yet to be written. Their father, a quiet man who cherished every moment with his girls, often spoke of Alara as eldest, as the joy of his family. A simple phrase that held the weight of his entire world. That Saturday was supposed to be like any other. School was out, the weekend stretched ahead. Alara had plans to meet an acquaintance, a boy named Kalen, someone she knew from school. She believed she could clear the air, put an end to the strange, uncomfortable tension that had grown between them. Her younger sisters, Lyra and Serafina, went about their day, oblivious to the unfolding horror. But Alara never came home. As hours stretched into frantic phone calls and then desperate searches, the initial worry turned to a cold, crushing fear. When Lyra and Serafina, driven by that unbreakable sisterly bond, went out to look for her, they too vanished into the encroaching twilight. The town held its breath. A family's worst fear was becoming a terrifying reality. Have you ever experienced that gut-wrenching feeling when someone you love doesn't come home? That desperate fear for the unknown? It's a void that echoes long after the initial shock. The predator in plain sight, Kalen, was an acquaintance from school, someone who moved on the fringes of Alara's social sphere. On the surface, he could appear quiet, unassuming. He blended in, rarely drawing significant attention, allowing him to observe without being closely scrutinized. But beneath that veneer of normalcy, those who truly knew him or paid close attention recognized a disturbing undercurrent. He carried a reputation for unpredictable reactions, a chilling lack of emotional response that often left others uneasy. He seemed to operate with an emotional void, unable to connect with or comprehend the feelings of those around him. Alara, with her natural sensitivity and keen intuition, felt this unsettling presence strongly. She'd sensed something profoundly off about him, a disconnect that made her uncomfortable. Over time, she actively began to create distance, subtly avoiding him, politely declining invitations, hoping he would simply get the message. She sought to disentangle herself from what felt like a growing, undefined threat. But Kalen did not take kindly to being pushed away. He harbored a twisted, possessive fixation, especially toward Alara. This wasn't about affection or mutual connection. It was about control, a warped sense of ownership. The idea of rejection, of being ignored or discarded by someone he decided belonged to his orbit, was an intolerable insult. He couldn't stand the thought of anyone, particularly Alara, having agency over their own choices, especially when those choices moved away from him. His emotional landscape seemed to lack the capacity for healthy boundaries, turning perceived slights into deep-seated grievances. As his resentment festered, Kalen began to voice his darker thoughts, casually, chillingly. He confided in a few of his friends, boasting of his intent to harm Alara. These weren't fleeting remarks made in a fit of pique. They were cold, calculated declarations that escalated into disturbingly detailed plans. He spoke of methods, of places, of the specific actions he intended to take. What is even harder to grasp, harder to process, is the reaction of some of his peers. Instead of alarm, instead of immediate intervention or reporting his terrifying intentions, some met his boast with disturbing indifference, even a macabre amusement. It was in this deeply unsettling atmosphere that the fateful dare was uttered. One specific friend, in a moment of twisted jest, offered Kalen a free breakfast if he carried out his monstrous intent. Imagine that. The idea of a horrific act of violence, the premeditated taking a young life, reduced to a casual wager, a challenge for a meal. It speaks volumes about the corrupted environment surrounding Kalen, an environment where such darkness wasn't met with immediate condemnation, but with perverse form of encouragement, a shocking validation. This seemingly throwaway comment, born of a chilling lack of judgment, perhaps even a sense of dark humor, served as a perverse affirmation, possibly even a final push for someone already teetering on the edge of unimaginable depravity. And so, on that dreadful Saturday, October 23rd, 2010, Ilera, hoping to finally resolve the lingering unease, agreed to meet Kaylin. She sought resolution, a desperate wish to put an end to the discomfort. Perhaps she hoped for a return to some semblance of friendship, or at least a clear boundary. What she walked into was a trap, meticulously set, fueled by a distorted mind and validated by a casual, horrifying dare. Her decision, born of innocent hope, tragically led her into the execution of a dark plan, one that would shatter not just her life, but the lives of her sisters and an entire community. A nightmare unfolds a secluded patch of woodland near Meadowbrook was usually a place of quiet refuge, often visited by teenagers seeking a moment away from watchful eyes. It was here, amidst the fading autumn light, that Kaylin had lured Ilera. He hadn't sought a conversation or a reconciliation. This was an ambush, premeditated and brutal. The confrontation escalated rapidly, culminating in an act of horrific violence. He used a large rock, delivering blows with savage intent. Ilera's vibrant life was extinguished there in the cold, wet earth, her body left face down, a testament to an unimaginable brutality. As the dusk deepened, an even more profound terror began to unfold. Lyra and Seraphina, driven by a powerful bond and mounting dread, were desperately searching for their older sister. They called her name into the gathering darkness, their voices echoing with growing panic. Their path led them, by sheer misfortune, to that same isolated spot. They stumbled upon the horrific scene, the unthinkable reality of what had happened to Ilera. The shock must have been instant, soul-crushing. But the horror didn't end there. Kaylin was still present, standing over his victim. When confronted by the two younger sisters, he showed no flicker of remorse, no sign of hesitation. The horror of what he had just done to Ilera was instantly, chillingly, transferred to them. They were not seen as individuals, but as witnesses, as loose ends to be eliminated, or perhaps, in the twisted depths of his mind, they were simply further targets of the violence he was unleashing. With the same chilling indifference, the same profound absence of compassion, he turned on Lyra and Seraphina. Their desperate pleas, their fear, meant nothing to him. The two younger sisters met the same tragic end as Ilera, their bright futures extinguished with a horrifying lack of humanity. After these unspeakable acts, Kaylin exhibited a disturbing sense of normalcy, a detachment that defied comprehension. With the bodies of the three sisters lying cold in the woods, he calmly made his way to the home of the friend who had made the free breakfast dare. There, he recounted the events of the evening. He spoke of the brutal acts with detached calm, a chilling narrative delivered without a hint of emotion or regret. His friend, initially perhaps caught in the same disturbing mindset, must have been shaken by the sheer, cold reality of Kaylin's confession. The macabre jest had become a gruesome truth. While Mr. Atherton and his family were consumed by frantic, desperate searches for their missing daughters, reaching out to police and community, Kaylin went online. He posted messages on social media, feigning concern for Ilera's disappearance. He described his normal evening at home, watching TV, creating a false narrative of innocence and detachment. The duplicity was sickening, a chilling performance designed to deflect suspicion, while his victims lay where he had left them. This act alone showcased a chilling, calculating nature, a mind capable of compartmentalizing extreme violence from everyday life with startling ease. He presented a composed, public face, while privately holding the knowledge of the devastation he had wrought. This level of calculated deceit, following such extreme violence, speaks to a deeply disturbed psychological profile. It reveals not just a capacity for murder, but a chilling ability to manipulate perceptions and operate without the burden of guilt or conscience. The casualness with which he discussed his actions and the audacity of his public pretense would later become key elements in understanding the disturbing depths of his mindset. The peace of Meadowbrook had been shattered, replaced by an unspeakable dread, and at the heart of it was a young man who moved with a terrifying, emotionless precision. The morning of October 24th, 2010, dawned cold and gray over Meadowbrook, a stark contrast to the vibrant lives that had stolen the night before. The discovery of Alara, Lyra, and Serafina Atherton's bodies sent immediate, bone-chilling shockwaves through the community. The small, quiet town, once defined by its tree-lined streets and close-knit feel, was suddenly gripped by profound grief and an overwhelming, gnawing fear. An unbearable silence fell, broken only by the whispers of disbelief and the cries of shattered hearts. Parents instinctively pulled their children closer. Neighbors looked at each other with questions in their eyes. An urgent, desperate demand for answers filled the very air they breathed. Who could have committed such an atrocity in their peaceful town? The police response was immediate and overwhelming. Every available resource, every officer, converged on the crime scene and the surrounding area. The initial hours were chaotic, a frantic, methodical effort to secure the extensive scene, to understand the unimaginable scope of the tragedy, and to begin the grim process of identifying who could be responsible for such a heinous act. Forensic teams, working with grim determination, meticulously began to gather every scrap of evidence from the woodland area. Each leaf, each disturbed patch of earth, every trace was vital. The sheer brutality of the crime meant that no detail, however small, could be overlooked. Every clue was a potential step towards justice. As the painstaking investigation progressed, certain disturbing details began to surface, slowly forming a cohesive, horrifying picture. Early witness statements, pieced together from the girls' last known activities, started to narrow the focus. Alara's planned meeting with Kaylin, an acquaintance from school, quickly became a significant point of interest for investigators. Why had she gone to meet him? What was the nature of their relationship? These questions formed the initial threads of inquiry that would ultimately lead them to their suspect. Further investigation into Kaylin's activities on that dreadful evening revealed alarming inconsistencies. While the Atherton family was consumed by their frantic, agonizing search for their missing daughters, desperate calls made to police and to friends, Kaylin had been engaged in a chilling performance of innocence. He had calmly made his way to a friend's house, recounting the night's events with a detached, almost conversational tone. Even more disturbing, he had gone online, posting messages on social media platforms, feigning concern for Alara's disappearance, describing his normal evening at home, watching TV. This calculated duplicity was sickening, a deliberate effort to construct a false narrative designed to deflect suspicion while his victims lay cold and abandoned. When police brought Kaylin in for questioning, his demeanor was immediately unsettling. He sat across from seasoned investigators with profound, almost unnatural calm, an unnerving composure that contrasted sharply with the immense gravity of the situation. There was no fidgeting, no outward sign of distress, no hint of the emotional turmoil one would expect from someone simply involved, let alone suspected, in such a horrific event. He provided an account of his evening, but his story was riddled with gaps, inconsistencies, and outright fabrications that quickly became apparent under scrutiny. He spoke with a chilling lack of emotion, showing no remorse, no flicker of empathy, even when confronted with the reality of what had happened to the girls. His responses were flat, almost rehearsed, as if reciting a script. This unsettling composure, combined with the rapidly emerging forensic evidence and the inconsistencies in his own statements, quickly solidified him as the prime suspect. DNA evidence, cell phone pings, and the meticulous collection of physical traces from the crime scene directly linked him to the horrific acts. The painstaking, tireless work of these dedicated teams, gathering irrefutable proof, meticulously built a mountain of evidence that left little room for doubt. It became chillingly clear that the predator had been hiding in plain sight, a seemingly ordinary teenager capable of unfathomable, remorseless cruelty. The moment of his arrest brought a collective, though grim, sigh of relief to Meadowbrook. It confirmed their worst fears, that one of their own, a young person they had seen in their streets and schools, was responsible for the unspeakable. Kaylin was taken into custody, ending the immediate threat and bringing a crucial step towards accountability. His unmasking was complete, but the profound questions of why such evil could exist and how it could manifest in someone so young would continue to haunt Meadowbrook for years to come. The trial. I'm normal. The atmosphere in the courtroom was charged with a heavy, anticipatory silence as the trial of Kaylin began. Every seat in the public gallery was filled, a testament to the community's desperate need for answers and justice. Media from across the region converged, their cameras and microphones poised, ready to capture every development. The air was thick with tension, a shared breath held in collective dread and expectation. All eyes were fixed on the defendant, a mere 16-year-old, whose youthful appearance sharply contrasted with the monstrous charges he faced. Kalen sat there, not with the trepidation of someone accused of unspeakable crimes, but with a disconcerting calm. A slight, almost imperceptible smile often played on his lips, an expression that sent shivers down the spines of those who observed it. The prosecution, led by a seasoned legal team, began meticulously laying out their case. They presented the overwhelming forensic evidence, the chilling digital trail of Kalen's feigned concern, and the damning testimony from a friend who had heard his boasts, and even the cold, macabre, free breakfast dare. Each piece of evidence painted a picture of a remorseless, calculating killer whose actions were deliberate, not impulsive. The brutality of the attacks on Alara, Lyra, and Serafina was detailed with a clinical precision that nonetheless left the courtroom in stunned silence. But it was Kalen's behavior in court that became a chilling spectacle, arguably as impactful as the evidence itself. He displayed an utter lack of remorse. He would lean back in his chair, occasionally yawn, and at times a soft, unsettling chuckle would escape him, especially during the most graphic descriptions of his deeds or when the pain on the faces of the Atherton family became most evident. It wasn't a nervous laugh. It was a casual, almost contemptuous sound, a sound of absolute indifference to the suffering he had caused. When directly questioned about his actions, Kalen's responses were delivered with a startling audacity. He claimed he was normal, that his actions were somehow justified. He asserted, with a chilling lack of self-awareness, that he had the right to commit these crimes. This wasn't the plea of a confused teenager or someone trying to escape responsibility. It was a defiant declaration of an individual who genuinely seemed to believe he operated outside the boundaries of conventional morality and law. He seemed utterly convinced that his youth would be a shield, that he would somehow evade severe consequences, expecting a leniency he clearly felt entitled to. The most profound and heartbreaking moment came during the victim impact statements. Mr. Atherton, the girl's father, a man whose life had been irrevocably shattered, stood to address the court. His voice, though trembling with grief, spoke with unwavering love for his lost daughters. He spoke of Alara as the joy of his family, a bright light that had been extinguished too soon. As Mr. Atherton recounted his daughter's dreams and the void their absence had created, Kalen reportedly laughed, a soft, contemptuous sound that echoed to the otherwise silent courtroom. And then, in a horrifying display of perverse possessiveness, the killer reportedly claimed that Alara was the joy of his family, a chilling insight into his delusional, self-centered mindset, asserting a twisted claim over the victim even in death. The defense attempted to leverage Kalen's age, portraying him as a misguided youth who had made a terrible mistake, perhaps influenced by external factors. They sought to evoke sympathy, to argue for a lesser degree of culpability given his immaturity. However, Kalen's own defiant and arrogant attitude, his chilling composure, and his casual laughter actively undermined every attempt to paint him in a sympathetic light. He made it impossible for the jury or anyone present to see him as anything but a cold, calculating individual. His complete disregard for court, the victims, and the justice system sealed his own fate. How do you process a mind that can commit such horrors and then laugh in the faces of the grieving? It truly challenges our understanding of human nature, doesn't it? Justice delivered, but not closure with all evidence presented and testimonies heard. The courtroom hushed as the jury withdrew to deliberate. For the Atherton family and the many members of the community packed into the gallery, these hours stretched into an eternity. Every minute was filled with agonizing anticipation, a torturous wait for a decision that would either affirm a profound loss with measure of accountability or leave them with an even deeper wound of injustice. Speculation ran rampant in hushed tones outside the courthouse. Would Kalen's youth truly be a factor? Could anyone truly understand the depravity witnessed within these walls? The tension was almost unbearable. Finally, after hours of deliberations, the courtroom doors creaked open. The jury filed back in, their faces unreadable, each step echoing in profound silence. Every eye in the room, from the judge to the grieving parents, was fixed on them. The clerk rose, the air thick with expectation. Then, the words that would forever etch themselves into the history of Meadowbrook were pronounced. We, the jury, find defendant Kalen guilty of 3 counts of murder. A collective gasp, a mix of quiet sobs and hushed, almost reverent cheers, swept to the public gallery. For the Atherton family, it was a moment of agonizing, tearful release, a confirmation that the suffering of their daughters had not been in vain, that their killer would face consequences. Yet, even in that moment of legal triumph, their faces remained etched with profound grief. Kalen, however, remained disturbingly impassive. His expression did not change. The slight smile, the chilling composure he had maintained throughout the trial, stayed fixed. The expectation he seemed to harbor, that his age would somehow shield him from serious repercussions, was now brutally crushed by the undeniable weight of the jury's verdict. The sentencing hearing followed, a solemn, unavoidable next step in the quest for accountability. The judge, his voice resonating with gravity, addressed Kalen directly, emphasizing the heinous nature of crimes. He meticulously detailed the extreme brutality of the attacks on Alara, Lyra, and Serafina, highlighting the premeditation involved and the profound lack of remorse that Kalen had displayed throughout the entire process. The judge made specific mention of Kalen's chilling conduct in court, his casual indifference, his unsettling laughter, and his self-righteous claims of normalcy and having the right to commit these atrocities. These actions, the judge stated, demonstrated not just a disregard for human life, but a terrifying danger to society. The court's judgment reflected society's strongest condemnation. And so Kalen, the 16-year-old who had extinguished 3 vibrant lives and then dared to claim he was normal, was sentenced to life imprisonment with a significant minimum term. This meant that his expectation of a lenient outcome, a consequence-free escape from justice due to his youth, was utterly shattered. Instead, he faced the stark, crushing reality of a lifetime behind bars, a future devoid of the freedom he had so recklessly abused. The sentence was not merely punitive. It was a clear declaration that such acts, regardless of the perpetrator's age, would be met with the full force of the law. For the Atherton family, the verdict and sentence provided a measure of justice, a legal conclusion to their unbearable nightmare. The fact that their daughter's killer would be held accountable offered a small, solemn comfort amidst their overwhelming grief. Yet, as the courtroom emptied, the profound truth remained. No legal outcome, no sentence, no matter how severe, could ever bring back Alara, Lyra, and Serafina. The vibrant lives they had lost were gone forever, leaving an unfillable void. Their father's heart remained broken, and while justice had been delivered in the eyes of the law, true closure, the kind that heals all wounds, would forever remain elusive. Meadowbrook collectively breathed a sigh of relief, but the shadow of Kalen's actions and the enduring grief of the Atherton family would forever mark the town. Psychological echoes, the legal proceedings brought a definitive outcome, but they left behind a host of profound questions, particularly about the mind of Kalen. How could a 16-year-old commit such horrific acts and then, with unwavering conviction, declare himself normal? This assertion, repeated throughout the trial, was perhaps the most unsettling detail of all. It wasn't merely a lie to escape punishment. It revealed a fundamental disconnect from reality, a perception where his actions, deemed monstrous by society, were simply acceptable, even justifiable, in his own internal world. It speaks to a chilling absence of a moral compass, where the concepts of right and wrong are either completely inverted or simply do not apply to him. There was no visible guilt, no apparent regret, only a cold, steadfast belief in his own distorted code. Central to this disturbing picture was the role of the free breakfast dare. On the surface, it seemed like a casual, throwaway comment from a misguided friend, but its impact on Kalen's psychology appears to have been far more profound. For someone who already harbored dark intentions, did this dare provide a final, perverse validation? Did it serve as an excuse, a push that removed any lingering, fragile barrier he might have had? It's possible that for Kalen, the dare wasn't a suggestion but a license, a casual green light that confirmed his dark thoughts weren't only acceptable, but perhaps even encouraged. This dynamic highlights unusual relationship patterns, where deeply troubling boasts were not met with alarm, but with horrifying, enabling indifference. His twisted possessiveness, particularly toward Alara, provides another crucial insight into his mindset. When Mr. Atherton spoke of Alara as the joy of his family, Kalen's reported counterclaim, that she was the joy of his family, was not just audacious. It was deeply indicative of profound psychological distortion. This wasn't love or affection. It was a deeply unhealthy sense of ownership and objectification of another human being. For Kalen, people seemed to exist not as autonomous individuals, but as possessions or tools within his own sphere of control. When Alara attempted to assert her independence, to create distance, it was perceived as an intolerable challenge to his distorted sense of dominion, triggering an extreme, violent response. This absolute need for control, coupled with fundamental inability to handle rejection, created a deadly combination. Perhaps the most defining characteristic that emerged from Kalen's actions and demeanor was his profound lack of empathy. This wasn't merely a lack of understanding. It was an inability to feel or comprehend the suffering of others. It manifested in his calm execution of the murders, his detached recounting of the events, and most horrifyingly, his laughter in the courtroom as the victim's family expressed their unbearable grief. For Kalen, the pain of the Atherton family simply didn't register. It was as if they were performing for him, their anguish an amusing spectacle rather than a tragic consequence of his own actions. This absence of emotional resonance allowed him to move through the world and through the trial with a terrifying, almost alien detachment. The Kalen case forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the development of extreme behavioral patterns in young people. What societal factors, what individual circumstances contribute to such profound breakdown in moral and emotional development? While we cannot offer clinical diagnoses, the observable behaviors, the manipulative tendencies, the lack of remorse, the distorted self-perception, and the capacity for extreme violence serve as chilling reminders. These are the shadows that linger, prompting us to consider how such a mind can operate so disconnected from the shared human experience of empathy and compassion. Even a friend who uttered the fateful dare must carry a significant psychological burden. While not directly complicit in the murders, the casual encouragement of violence, the flippant nature of his words that fateful night, undoubtedly left an indelible mark on his own conscience. The incident serves as a stark reminder of the gravity of words and actions, even though seemingly uttered in jest, and their potential to impact those around us. The story of Alara, Lyra, and Serafina remains a tragic testament to the devastating consequences when a mind operates without the basic framework of human empathy, when a twisted sense of entitlement defines one's actions, and when a profound psychological void leads to unimaginable cruelty. The legal conclusion of Kalen's trial brought a definitive end to one chapter. Yet for the Atherton family, the nightmare continued, simply shifting its form. The courtroom's verdict of guilt and the imposition of a life sentence offered a crucial measure of justice, a societal acknowledgment of the unimaginable wrong inflicted upon Alara, Lyra, and Serafina. It meant their killer would be held accountable, removed from society. But no legal decree, no matter how severe, could ever truly fill the void left by three vibrant lives extinguished too soon. Mr. Atherton's world remained shattered. The laughter that once echoed through his home, the dreams he shared with his daughters, were forever silenced. Their absence was a permanent wound, a daily reminder of what was lost. This is a grim reality of living with such a profound, senseless tragedy. The impact of Kalen's actions stretched far beyond the Atherton family, casting a long shadow over the entire community of Meadowbrook. The town's innocence was irrevocably lost. The streets once felt safe, the neighbors trustworthy. Now, a subtle layer of apprehension remained. The memory of October 23, 2010, became a defining marker in the town's history, a stark reminder of how quickly peace can be shattered by an act of incomprehensible cruelty. It taught a chilling lesson, that profound malevolence could reside behind a youthful, seemingly ordinary face, operating with terrifying indifference to the value of human life. Kalen's legacy is defined by that chilling declaration of normalcy and his unsettling laughter in court. His refusal to acknowledge wrongdoing, his profound detachment from the consequences of his actions, reveal a deeply disturbed psychological landscape. He stands as a stark example of an individual operating without a functional moral compass, someone for whom the basic tenets of empathy and human connection simply do not apply. His case underscores that true darkness isn't always overt. Sometimes it masquerades in plain sight, making it even more perplexing and terrifying. Ultimately, while the justice system provided accountability, it did not, and could not, provide genuine closure or complete healing for the victim's family. Justice is a critical step, a societal imperative, but it is distinct from the complex, lifelong journey of coping with immeasurable grief. For the Athertons, the legal outcome brought a sense of vindication, but their personal pain is a permanent part of their existence. It's a powerful distinction that stories like this compel us to understand. This tragic case also forces us to reflect on broader implications, on the subtle, often missed, warning signs that precede such horrors. It highlights the critical importance of taking unusual or disturbing behaviors seriously, especially in young people. Threats, strange statements, persistent patterns of lack of empathy, or a disregard for others' feelings should never be dismissed as mere youthful eccentricity. They are signals that demand attention, prompts to seek help or report concerns. The story also underscores the responsibility of those around individuals exhibiting concerning traits, like the friend who made the dare. While not directly culpable for the murders, the casual encouragement of violence, even as a jest, reflects a dangerous normalization that can have catastrophic consequences. It's a stark reminder that as a society, we must foster environments where concerning behaviors are met with intervention, not indifference, where compassion and responsibility are prioritized over morbid curiosity or desire to fit in. We are all, in a way, bystanders, and our collective response to red flags can sometimes mean the difference between peace and profound tragedy. The case of Alara, Lyra, and Serafina Atherton is a stark, enduring testament to the devastating consequences when a mind operates without the basic framework of human empathy, when a twisted sense of entitlement defines one's actions, and when profound psychological void leads to unimaginable cruelty. Their story, though heartbreaking, compels us to understand these dark complexities, to ask difficult questions, and to learn from the shadows. This story, like all true crime narratives we explore on Dynamic Crime, serves not just to recount events, but to shed light on the darkest corners of human behavior and the relentless pursuit of justice. It reminds us of the fragility of life and the immense strength of the human spirit in the face of unspeakable loss. If you found yourself captivated by this deep dive into the disturbing mind that stole 3 lives and laughed at the cost, then you're exactly where you need to be. Understanding these chilling realities is part of our shared journey on this channel. What are your thoughts on the psychological factors at play here, and what do you think society can learn from such tragic events? Let us know your reflections in the comments below. If you're drawn to understanding the complex patterns of crime, the relentless pursuit of justice, and profound impact on lives, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Dynamic Crime, and hit that notification bell, so you don't miss our next deep dive into the true stories that shape our world.